Joining us right now to talk more about the GOP's stimulus proposal, Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, of course, a member of the Congressional Oversight Commission tasked with monitoring how the Fed and Treasury are managing that CARES Act fund. Good morning to you, Senator. Where do you think we are, and how quickly can something like this really get passed?
Oh, I imagine it's probably another week or two. But this one's going to be different from previous bills in that the Republicans will be divided on this one. The other bills have passed thus far, I think unanimously in I think every case. That's not going to happen this time. We're already spending a tremendous amount of money, and that's before Speaker Pelosi gets her pounds of flesh. So this one's going to be a different kind of negotiation.
And in terms, though, I mean, let's talk about it. There's the Republicans and the Democrats, and then you're talking about sort of two factions, even with the Republican Party. How do you see that breaking down, and what are the implications for whatever we see ultimately in this bill?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a little bit hard to know, but I think there'll be a lot of conservatives who will say we just aren't going to go. And remember, keep in mind what we've already done. $3 trillion of spending, another $3 trillion at least of authorization for the Fed for lending. That's 30% of our entire GDP. And some of us look and see some price signals that are starting to get a little bit worrisome, right? A sustained decline in the dollar, gold setting new records, silver on a rocket ship, tip spreads widening relative to ordinary treasuries. At what point do we say there's a red light flashing here? So the idea that we're going to pile on over after the trillion that's already on the table, another, trillion? That's going to be really, really problematic. I think Speaker Pelosi is likely to be adamant about sending still more money to state governments. We've sent $486 billion already. They have taxing authority. They have the power to go out and borrow funds, but she's going to insist on a whole lot more. My guess is some of that probably gets in. Fortunately, we do have the liability protection. That's absolutely essential. That's in our bill. But I'm really worried about where this ends up.
Senator, let me ask you, though, in terms of the economy and what you think is at risk if more money is not spent, and I will say the conventional wisdom, at least in the markets, had been going into the election, I think the view was between the administration and, frankly, many Republicans and also Democrats, that people were planning or expecting the government would spend. No?
There is a high expectation of that, and that expectation is probably correct. Look, I think this is going to pass in the end, and probably another trillion or $2 trillion. By the way, we're monetizing about 60% of this. We borrow the other 40%. How does this end well if you just keep doing this in increments of trillions? I think at some point we get to the point where it's a little bit much. And one of the other worries that I have more immediately is that some of these things actually discourage the reopening of the economy. These direct payments. The vast majority of direct payments went to people who didn't have any lost income. And we're going to do that again, except on a bigger scale. So there's a lot of this that's a little bit worrisome.
How concerned are you about cities and municipalities? We had a conversation with Bill Gates that we ran earlier this morning about the exodus that people may make from big cities and municipalities. And I know there's a big debate about whether they should be supported. So many of them that are going to be probably hurt the most are, frankly, in blue states.
Yeah, and let's be honest, this is like the final straw in many cases for these cities where they've been very, very badly managed for an extended period of time. Let's also keep in mind we have stood up a lending facility to provide liquidity. That has not been drawn significantly, but that is available. We also sent a lot of money to states that is finding its way to municipalities. In my state of Pennsylvania, there's over $1 billion of the CARES Act that has been set aside in reserve, has not yet been allocated. That's available to go to cities. Some of the money that has been allocated has gone to counties, and many county governments have not had a revenue loss. They can allocate that to cities within their boundaries. So there's a lot that's already been done.